I'm seriously fed up with this toxic approach to game development that has destroyed so many good series in recent years. And yeah, in the newest God of War we will most likely play as a woman instead of Kratos. But we'll get to that in a second, because it so happened that I read this news exactly one day after I decided to make a video about the modern audience. You know, the people who are capable of strongly defending a low quality product simply because a character's gender, skin color or another trait was changed to something more progressive. The patterns of fighting everything phobes are always the same, and we will talk about them in this material, but the thing that triggers me the most about this entire situation I will leave for the very end, and I hope you will agree with me. I can't believe that more than 500 people are subscribed to this channel, so if you're one of them, then thanks a lot for supporting the channel, and let's get into the video. Recently the world was flooded with the information that in the new part of God of War, which will most likely appear at the beginning of 2027, we will not see Kratos in the main role, but his wife, Faye. If you don't remember very well, it is exactly her who was the story of the first God of War is based on, whereas Kratos, together with our son Atreus, we are set off to the highest mountain to scatter her ashes there. So basically she is a character like Mimir, but with less voice lines. But I don't quite understand drama around it, because the source of the leak does not define whether it is supposed to be a spin-off or maybe a new official God of War that Santa Monica Studio has supposedly been working for the last 5 or maybe 8 years on. If it were a spin-off, it would be understandable, because the game is supposed to move away from mechanics of previous God of War games and go more toward combat in the style of Devil May Cry. So exactly something like Control Resonant, where we get a story in the same universe but with different mechanics and as a separate product. Or like in Uncharted The Lost Legacy, presenting the story of Woman instead of Nathan Drake. In that case, a choice like this is acceptable, because who cares about the change to Woman if the story is new? It could be Frey, it could be Zeus, it could be Kratos' dog, but only if the story is told well and it doesn't stop the development of the main series. But as I said, in the articles this information is not provided, and instead we simply hear about the new God of War. Of course, some news outlets are providing this information that it will be spin-off. I don't know where they got it, but thanks a lot for that, at least. I wonder if the other ones are deliberately misleading players, because following that logic, the outrage is completely understandable, because it doesn't matter if it's a fictional character or a real one. By signing a game with the next instance of God of War series, we are actually expecting a God of War, not a giantess, regardless of how well she would be written. This is a similar situation to the Witcher series, where the game has the word Witcher in the title, even though she's not a Witcher, she's Witcheress, what? But you might use the argument, however, that our relationship with Ciri was built up through the third game, so it kinda fits better and more organical into the story. Here, on the other hand, we would receive a new character we know practically nothing about, and it would only destroy the bond players have with the series, which of course would later be called sexism, and the blame for the game's failure would be placed on the fans of the series. Therefore, the players who, while reading those articles, understood them as the new God of War was supposed to be the next main installment of the series that Santa Monica Studio dedicated all of its resources to, have the right to be outraged. However, the progressive and modern audience on Twitter quickly rushed to rescue the main heroine. Posts have already appeared saying that anyone who criticizes the game is simply a sexist or is afraid of women. There is no place here for a different opinion, there is no place for nuances, you simply have to support this change or you're our enemy. Let me remind you that the leaks did not state whether it's supposed to be the main installment of the series. And let me remind you that it's basically art. You have a right to not like this art. You don't have to explain yourself why you don't like it. If you don't like it because of woman, you have every right. I don't like pixel art in the games. And thankfully, it's not connected to LGBT, because they would be already calling me some pixel phobe or something. And the worst thing is that the people who oppose the people who are criticizing the game would defend this game regardless of whether it destroys the brand, so it's like main installment, or not. We started with people farming hate on hating on everything that is woke, even if it's not, and we ended up with modern audience farming hate on mocking any criticism to the game. Santa Monica Studio could literally turn Kratos into a woman and make him say, "I'm non-binary." And people like that would still call anyone criticizing it sexists and incels, or some other stupid modern insult. The easiest test would be to release a game where Lara Croft would be replaced with Larry Crawford. And I can guarantee you that the most people who were criticizing the Angrboda model from God of War Ragnarok would also criticize that change. But unfortunately we will never find out, because change in one direction is correct, while in the other is offensive. Actually, to prove this, I remember premiere of God of War Ragnarok, where many people complained that Angrboda will be dark-skinned, and other people were saying that they are racist and that it's only pixels. You shouldn't be mad about pixels, right? So now someone released a mod that is modding God of War Ragnarok to turn Angrboda from being dark-skinned into white. And you know what? Modern audience got mad about pixels. So if someone thinks that replacing Kratos with another character in the main part of the series would be a good thing, then that person is simply stupid. By the way, only here on my channel, the best channel in the world, you will hear about both of those possibilities, because it's easier to say that this is the main part of the game and farm clicks. So if you like the video so far, please leave a like. Thanks a lot. And now we get to the best illustration of the process of attacking criticism, and that's the series Doctor Who. It's a story about an alien who is changing form every few seasons, meaning also the actor changes, going through different adventures together with his human companion. I am a fan of this series, but I always have to emphasize that only until the end of season 9. But I'm not the only one, because already in season 10 you can see the worst viewer ratings. Fortunately, the Doctor's companion, Bill Potts, was written as a lesbian, therefore any criticism of the Doctor was reflected as homophobia. Then the Doctor became a woman, and again on the internet there were comments equating all criticism of the series with sexist viewers being afraid of women, ignoring all comments pointing out to the fact that the plot focuses more on ticking off points from the list of progressiveness rather than on an interesting story. When I was a child and I got angry, my parents told me to go outside and hit a tree, so I would feel better. And it looks as if the writers were doing exactly the same thing, pushing progressive characters into the story by force so that they themselves would feel relief. So they could feel that they did something good for the world and feel better about themselves. Seriously, for every Doctor I can name many episodes that stayed in my memory. Let's take the best ones. For Eccleston, it's The Empty Child. For Tennant, of course, Blink.
Don't blink. Don't even blink. Blink and you're dead.
For Smith, it's Vincent and the Doctor. And for Capaldi, Heaven Sent. I remember that on premiere it was criticized, but I love this episode. Each of them would of course be better to watch in order of the series, but you can easily watch them without catching up on previous episodes, and you will still have more fun than watching all the episodes of the new Doctor on Disney+. From the new seasons, I do not remember a single episode at all, except The Devil's Court, and only because the main antagonist acted terribly. And I shared my opinion on Reddit, and you will guess it, I got banned. Especially this acting was terrible compared to, for example, the Toymaker, who also appeared in the new seasons of The Doctor and was also played by someone representing the LGBT community. He was played by Neil Patrick Harris. And that's the example of being everything phobe, because someone can make a bad faith argument that I only liked seasons where the main role was played by a white man. It's a pity that the people who claim that will never understand that this is about the correlation between how LGBT characters are presented and the quality of the story itself. Because representations like that existed in Doctor Who since the very first season. For example, in the form of the Captain Jack Harkness, who openly was gay, except that back then the creators actually paid attention to the quality of the story, because criticism from fans was treated equally. Or Missy, the female version of Doctor's main enemy, the Master. So basically also the character whose gender was supposedly changed, but she herself had so much character that it was great to watch her clashes with the Doctor. Interesting why these episodes of season 10 of Doctor Who are so well rated. Oh, okay, she's in them. Despite that, every criticism of season 10 was called homophobia, criticism of seasons 11 to 13 sexism, and criticism of seasons 14 to the latest everything phobia, because the creators started going completely overboard after Disney bought the series.
You're assuming he as a pronoun.
True. Yes, sorry, good point. Are you he or she? Or they?
And then, who would expect, exactly what the real fans warned about happened. The viewership of the series plummeted drastically, and Disney ended cooperation with the creators of Doctor Who, because of which the series returns to BBC again at the end of 2026. They tried everything they could except writing an interesting story that would not shove political correctness down people's throats. They even tried to bring back the most iconic Doctor, played by Tennant, of course adding moral lessons about non-binary identity. And As a last desperate effort, they tried to bring back Billie Piper as Rose Tyler, which unfortunately did not help them keep the series on the Disney platform. And you know what is the worst thing and what triggers me the most? That only we care about this. Only someone who watched Doctor Who from beginning gets triggered by how low this story has fallen. That maybe this brand will never recover from it. Exactly the same thing is happening with Star Wars fans, where the main hero had to be destroyed in the name of progressive values. And exactly the same thing is happening with Indiana Jones, where Indiana gets beaten by a strong progressive woman. And with many other brands, where the story was sacrificed in the name of fulfilling some stupid standards of progressiveness that react aggressively to every sign of criticism. And this modern audience splits into two groups. The first group are people who will happily consume the product simply because as a minority they feel noticed. Or even better, they are not a minority, but they feel like their progressiveness and tolerance have been noticed, and they feel good about it. Second group will strongly claim that pushing representation at the expense of the story is necessary, calling opponents everything phobes, and when the series they advocated for reaches a critical point, they will abandon it, claiming that the story simply became worse, without seeing the correlation between their actions and the failure of the franchise. What triggers me is that these are usually people who do not care about the success or failure of a given series, so after one failure, they will simply move on to another one, loudly claiming that it needs more progressiveness. So basically like with that meme. To summarize it, we have a game about which not everything is known yet, but click farming articles have already started another war in which critics with good intentions are reduced to sexists because they do not like the destruction of their favorite series. On the other side, there is a series that believed in its own progressiveness so much that it made its entire identity about it until nobody except fanatics of progressive culture wants to waste their time on it. We have reached a moment where real fans cannot express their criticism out of fear of being labeled as everything phobes, as a result of which popular series collapse. This fate happened to Star Wars, Star Trek, Doctor Who, Dragon Age, The Witcher series, Mass Effect, and for example Overwatch. Although the latter supposedly still have a chance to redeem itself in the eyes of fans, so not everything is lost. I hope that the new God of War with a female character will only be a spin-off and not the official direction of the series, and that you had a good time watching this video. If so, then I will see you in the next one. For now, bye bye.